Closing speech. All right, so I'm going to invite our closing presenter, the Honorable Chili Obeu Aswiji, up here. For those of you who don't know Chili, and I think we all do because he's quite famous as the former president of the International Criminal Court, we've been talking about the al-Bashir case today. He is the author of that appeals court decision, but he started his career as a prosecutor at the Rwanda Tribunal and at the Special Court for Sierra Leone, so he knows both sides of the aisle, and he did a terrific job as president of the ICC, and now he's joined us as an academic. And we've asked him to share his thoughts about this topic for the last 15 minutes. I do have an announcement to make. How many of you are panelists who are going to be staying for the dinner that we have? Please raise your hands. Okay, so we're just going to go down the hall to the left to room 204. It's the last room before the grand piano, and there's going to be a nice Italian dinner for you. And then Paul is going to have us after dinner go and get some ice cream, and then we're going to go and have drinks. So the party just continues on. But before then, we do have a 15-minute closing. Chili, will you come up here? And thank you for being with us, my friend. I want to say, Chili and he's got a brother that lives in Solon. See, all things revolve around Cleveland. Solon's a suburb of Cleveland. And he was in town a couple of weeks ago, just gave me a call, and he said, hey, are you doing anything today? And it was a weekend, and I said, I'm going to go for a 4-mile walk out in the metro parks. And he says, I'll join you. And we just hiked and hiked and hiked. It was just wonderful. So, floor is yours.
Thanks, and that's how this invitation materialized. I didn't know about it. Thank you very much, Michael. I think Professor Kelly it was who said that international law stops where realpolitik begins, and that is certainly a thought that can have its own conference. But while we do that, in the meantime, I think one thought I'd like to begin with was one that Robert Jackson gave about 77 years ago, when he said that those who know the deficiencies of international law are also those who know the permanence and diversity of its accomplishments and its indispensability to a world that plans to live in peace. It looks like that is what the Ukraine moment, as has been said repeatedly here, has presented us. But that wasn't the only thing, but credit to Professor Kelly, that he said. There's something else he said that when I said realpolitik, the point he made wasn't the only thing he said in this conference. He said also this in relation to Mr. Putin. He said, I'm sure that his lawyers in Kremlin advised him that he had immunity, but to his greatest surprise, he does not, quote unquote, Professor Kelly. Now, some thoughts have been expressed here, and Michael has given me credit for the pronouncements of the appeals court judgment in the Bashir case. I think I must be plain in saying it wasn't only me. Yes, I might have been the front man of that band, but it was a unanimous judgment of the appeals chamber of the International Criminal Court. But the important thing there is, I don't want to talk here about immunity. There's a lot of balls thrown up in the air. Michael was piling it all on. Chile will talk about that when it gets on. I could have a long discussion about immunity, but I wouldn't do that. I would say rather that, yes, I just completed a manuscript of a book, 560 pages or so, that will elaborate on that. It is not a contentious proposition. People think it is. But what's important, I'd like us to take away are those words of Professor Kelly, that he thought he had immunity, but he does not. But it's important to also stress that it wasn't only Mr. Putin's lawyers in the Kremlin that would have been giving him that advice. Let us be clear in saying that there were a lot of academics from the West, from some of the prestigious universities in the West, and also those who were debating these things at the ILC, who gave that impression that there is immunity in customary international law for heads of state. And of course, here we are with that proposition. So we take it out. That's the takeaway from this conference. There is no immunity, and there's no debate too much of it about that. But again, I don't want to dwell on that for the remainder of my remarks. I want to thank Michael for inviting me to this, and also join Professor Nanda in his opening statements to Michael, saying not only does he put on a fantastic conference, but also he has a fantastic band. He tried to recruit me to sing on the spot, but unlike, he'd given Sasha advance notice that you're coming to play on the band, but he did not give me advance notice that I should be singing this band. So I decided, no, I'm not going to sing. Next time I will, if you give me advance notice. All right, but thank you very much for a great conference. Now, Sean gave a great, thought-provoking, magnificent keynote opening speech, and Sean Murphy and we worked together on the Al-Bashir case, by the way. I was on the bench and he was at the bar, but it was magnificent one of my joys on the bench of the ICC is to have him argue the case. Very, very engaging advocate. I enjoyed having that friendship from then on. Now, the only thing I would say is that I wish the US would have been part of the ICC to give ICC judges like that, of that caliber, joining it to do the work. But on Sean's speech, let me begin with that. His keynote. One of the thoughts in it was a question, do we have a new Cold War? He raised that question, and there has been, again, some discussions about that. I also teach, in addition to international criminal law, international humanitarian law, I also teach international relations to graduate students in a political science department at the University of Windsor. And I have expressed the view that we have been having the second Cold War for quite some time. Now, I remain open to hearing contrary arguments that would make me change my mind about that view, but I haven't had that argument. So in the meantime, that remains my view. Whether or not the alignments in that new Cold War would be US versus Russia, or US and its allies versus Russia, China, and their allies, to me, is neither here nor there. The point is that there has been a development that has been crippling the UN Security Council in doing what it needs to do in Syria, in Yemen, and other places. For me, that does count. And it was what we saw in the old Cold War that we're seeing again. It does matter from that perspective. So yes, I would say there is a new Cold War that's ongoing. It has been around for some time. So that thought done, I'll take another strand of Sean's magnificent discussion. He discusses how Russia has been showing weakness, or is a weakened state, not as strong as it was at the time of the first Cold War. For various reasons, he makes that argument. But one of them was that the war in Ukraine has exposed Russia as a state that's not as military strong as it used to be, if I understood the point. Now, that is one point I keep thinking about, and for some time now, what this means. And in my studies and research and thinking about conflicts and international law, I always go back to the big conflicts we've had and try to look at those conflicts from what is happening now. One of the big conflicts of history that we all would have studied would have been the Napoleonic Wars that started in 1800 to 1815. Napoleon was a strong man of Europe at the time, but then he overreached and other states ganged up and he was defeated. He did not have nuclear powers. In 1914, the Kaiser did the same thing. He overreached and the rest of the world ganged up against him. He did not have nuclear weapons and he was defeated. In 1939, Hitler did the same thing. Again, the rest of the world ganged up and defeated him. He did not have nuclear weapons at the time. For me, the only difference between those three examples and this one is that Putin has nuclear weapons. If he didn't have nuclear weapons, by now, the US would have done what the West did in 1914, and in 1939, they would have gone in and said, no, you get out of Ukraine or you're shooting at us. But the nuclear weapons have stopped that happening. And the lesson in that is that any state who overreaches runs the risk of everybody else ganging up against them. And that is what's happening. Yes, the West may not have sent boots on the ground, but they've been flushing Ukraine with money and sophisticated weapons and intelligence and other things we don't know about. So it is not correct to look at the whole thing as if it's Ukraine that's defeating Russia. It is the world saying, no, we don't like this. And that's what happens to big powers that overreach. And that's why we say, let's look at ways to stop strong powers, strong men, usually men, engaging in wars of aggression. And how do we do that? And quickly, I'm going to use 2 minutes to try and make the point. And that is, let us plug that hole in the Rome Statute against the crime of aggression that exists now. It is important to do it. Let's not say, well, let's concentrate now and build this new ad hoc tribunal on aggression, and maybe we do ICC amendment later. No, I think we should concentrate our attention completely on doing both. And Leila hit the point on the head in her typical fashion, didn't beat about the bush. So here, there's some discussion we need to start having about double standards. And that discussion begins perhaps with plugging that hole in the Rome Statute. That may be something that will get the other countries that are lukewarm about this or silent about this to re-engage with that effort. To the extent that the attention is only on creating a new ad hoc tribunal for the war in Ukraine and nobody seeing real movement or appetite in amending the Rome Statute to close that gap on the crime of aggression, that distrust is going to remain there, and it will undermine that new tribunal if it does get created, or eventually also the international criminal justice system as a whole. So I'll leave it at that for now and not hold you up any further from your dinner. Thank you very much.
That was just a great way to wrap things up. A couple of people to thank before we send you on your way. Is Eric Seiler there? There he is. Eric Seiler runs everything to do with our conferences. He gets us the people here, he puts them at the hotels. He makes sure that AV is working well. He does it all. Thank you, Eric, for being Eric. Our wonderful Journal of International Law. So are you the only two left here now, or is there anybody else? There you guys are. Stand up, take a bow. You guys are awesome. You're going to be publishing a great journal issue, and you were very helpful today. our panelists that flew from all over the place, and as far away as the Netherlands, and from all over the United States, some braving the issues of the hurricane down in Florida, and positive thoughts to anybody down in Florida, by the way. But can you guys stand up and just let us thank you one more time for being great panelists? Yeah. And then, and our keynote speaker too. So, all right, and everybody who comes here for our conferences, we have a rich lineup of conferences year-long, not only in international law. Our alums are fantastic. They're extremely supportive of the law school, and we're very happy to be able to do this, and it's because of your support. Everybody drive safely tonight, and God bless. Thank you for coming. Okay. Yes, I already announced it, but I'll announce again. Those of you who are panelists who are staying, just go down the hall to 204. We have a dinner for you. After dinner, it's ice cream and then drinks. You deserve it. You've earned it. Thanks, everybody.